In my capacity in my company, I'm often an evangelist for new cutting-edge media, and I often get burned by new cutting-edge media because often it doesn't develop as fast as I need it to for one reason or another there. So I'm going to be talking out of wearing two hats today, or three hats really, and one of those hats is as the Department of New Media professor there. And another hat is as an employee in a firm that does cutting edge, what's called disruptor type of technology, where we come in and we displace the old ways of delivering media to people there. And another side I'll be talking about is through my company, Neospatial. And so I'll be just talking about some of the potentials for those media. So it's very problematic there. I'll be speaking from, well, really three hats. There, but I think you kind of have to in our era. You know, a lot of us have had to migrate to phones when we didn't want to, and we had those phones become television sets, and we had those television sets start listening to us during the day, and then we had to figure out how to turn them off. So, you know, we've all had to navigate through that, and it seemed like it was going to solve some problems, and it certainly did, and then it created more problems as it solved. But really what I'm talking about here is the fourth industrial revolution, as they call it. And I was asked by the media, when was this going to happen? And I said, oh, it's already happening there, because it really is. It's starting to sweep over us very, very quickly here. Yeah, I'm getting some feedback from there. But it's happening quite quickly to us, and it will be happening much more so. I notice most of us in the room are over 50, so it'll be happening a lot to those people that are much younger. They're growing up in an era where they've never known a time when they didn't have digital media. And so that digital media is pervasive. It's everywhere here. This is an analog microphone. At some point, it'll be a completely digital microphone. At some point, we won't even need microphones. You know, it just sort of moves on as systems get put into place to sort of speed things along. That's really what I'm going to be talking about today. But part of the realization for me was when I was working for this company in situ. And I do this as a professor to sort of see what's behind the curtain, as they say in The Wizard of Oz. You kind of look behind and you see that, and it's problematic, but at the same time, there's also it's very illuminating to see how Silicon Valley actually works, and that's the era we work in. We're actually selling a software system there that what it does is, you know, when you use your phone and you get a pop-up and it says, oh, you're from guys from Lethbridge who are 55, et cetera, it seems to know everything about me. What it's doing is it's looking at the cookies on your system, which are just these little bits of information, and telling the main servers back there that you have been looking at this system, you're at this age. It knows a lot about you, so it delivers that media. So I got involved in this because I was trying to solve a problem for the company, and then actually started being part of the problem of producing this. And what we actually do, and you might see this if the technology is purchased, is it digitally embeds 3D ad media directly into social media. And so you'll have a social media cat video or something like this, and products appear there. You won't even know they're there. So it's very problematic, like I said, because on one level, I have this ethical responsibility, and it's what I teach as part of the university. But on another level, I'm working at kind of subliminal advertising, if you call it that. But really what I'm doing is nothing more than what companies are doing when they hire Domino's, or Domino's hires them to put a Domino's pizza box in a movie. It's just we're doing it after the fact there. So on that level, it's actually peanuts compared to what I'm going to be talking about today, because that's just advertising. But it has really opened up my eyes to what is going to sweep over us very quickly, which is scalability. So if you have a process, and that process is to make something, and that thing that you're making involves 100 people, if you're able to reduce that to 50 people, obviously your profit goes up as long as your quality doesn't go down too much. And if you're able to theoretically remove everybody from that process, so it's a completely automatic process, then not only is that extremely efficient in terms of a profit return, but it's also, and this is the key thing, scalable. And so if you can run that across a computer system, you can scale it infinitely. So let's say you're making jackets and you have 100 people. Well, if you want to expand and make more jackets, you need 200 people, you need 1,000 people, you need 10,000 people. That's problematic. You need places to house them, you need so on and so forth. When you have a software that plugs into Facebook and does something that empowers Facebook to strip data from users, then, and that is an algorithm, it's completely automatic, it's a computer formula, it's scalable. Facebook has 100 million people, it's scalable. Facebook has 2 billion people, it's scalable. It's just a software function. So that's where they make their money, is in terms of that massive scalability. That scale, and I'll try to explain this more later, that scale wasn't possible on any level 10 years ago. There's been so much change in terms of the speed, of the complexity of the hardware that's actually powering that, and the software, and also the educational level of the people working to develop those softwares through Google, Amazon, Facebook, Baidu, other organizations that are all have massive servers and process what's called big data here. So I'm just going to move along to the slide. So yeah, here's this is the company I'm working for. It really just opened up my eyes for just that scalability factor. The moment that people are completely excluded from a process that is a profit-based kind of process, it becomes perfectly scalable and scales up to endless populations there. So I'll try to explain that a little bit better. These are really complex technologies. But the first thing I want to talk about is privacy. So a lot of us have this idea that people are constantly trying to break into our digital databases, our homes, there physically and digitally into our phones, our houses. There. And so there's kind of the cliche that there's a burglar out there that's trying to break in. Well, they are. Everybody's trying to break in all the time in the dark side of the net. That's what they do. But the thing is that for us, this is really just one-off kind of attacks that are coming, whether it's a government doing a one-off attack and they're trying to get into a database that has a collection of information. They're usually going after something specific, Hillary Clinton's emails or your banking data there. They want something very specific from this. And so the thing I want to get across here is that this is a cliche and it's actually a lost leader, which is that this idea of this hooded 20-something who's just there to hack through your data. They certainly are there, and they're hobbyists and they're professional hackers there, but they're just professional thieves working to try to get access to your stuff, right? And so here they're going to damage your data there, and so it's always a young person who's got a hammer or something like that. So anyway, the things I want to talk about are algorithmic reductivism, which is kind of what I was just explaining. When you reduce something down until it's just a formula, it scales up endlessly and is tremendously profitable. To give you an idea, the kind of top blue chip companies like GE, they extract about $200,000 per employee there, and so it's a pretty good return. Companies like Facebook, well, I wouldn't say Facebook, Google, extract about $20 million, $22 million. They have so few employees, and yet they gather so much information and they sell so much that they're able to do that. Why did they do that? Well, because they have their hands in pretty much every pot there. So I will also talk about quantum processing here and just the kind of revolution that's going to happen with quantum processing if they can solve some of the problems. GPU scalability, so if you are a video gamer, there you use a GPU. It just allows you to play video games very quickly, but it also allows the military to target ISIS individuals. It also put in rows, in series. It's scalable. That's what scalability is that all they have to do is just buy endless numbers of these graphics cards, and they're able to increase the number of calculations that they're doing in order to harvest data from you. Big data. So this ability now to have massive servers, the cloud, where there's huge servers filled with data there. I'll explain how important that is to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a category there that has some subcategories, which I'll also explain there. Pervasive media systems, so personal assistants in your homes, and just how those tie into big data and how those tie into these algorithmic systems there. And finally, digital social engineering there. And I'll talk about Google's Sidewalk Labs process as a metaphor for how a company of systems will create a larger system that will ultimately incorporate you into their operating system until ultimately all you are is data for their harvesting. So I have a dark vision here, obviously. Obviously, Google has done a lot of good. It's done wonders in terms of searchability. It's done fantastic things in terms of ultimately self-driving cars will probably be a boon to some degree in society there. But I just want a quick statement I wrote here to try to sort of sum it up. When humans are treated as data and the environment that they occupy are designed like operating systems and optimized for digital efficiencies and data harvesting, then the ubiquity and complexity of the system transcends their ability to understand what is public and what is private. And so I guess my point here is that, yeah, there's, that idea of that person trying to break into our stuff. There's always going to be protections, and there's always going to be people offering us protections there. But the main thing I want to get across here is that the people offering those protections and offering an operating system that you can inhabit, an actual kind of digital house that you can inhabit, in which they provide all things, autonomous vehicles, they provide all your search information, they provide your education there, are actually the thieves. That's their job, is that they have you're living in their apartment, and they're just constantly harvesting data from you. So it is very creepy on that side, and I think very problematic, because the people at the top don't really see this as a problem there, which I do. So, there's lots of attempts to, these sort of personal assistants here, this idea that we'll have children that are trackable and that you will constantly monitor their health, monitor the health of the elderly, but obviously some flaws have come up in that process. Germany has now banned these devices, and they're telling all parents to destroy them there, because people are listening into the children in their classrooms. There, the parents are monitoring teachers, and people are tracking them in the same way that hunters can track collared bears. So people have obviously thought of this, but the fact that this is actually now a concern that has the German government telling people to destroy it means that there aren't checks and balances to really do due diligence in advance. Here's how fast things have advanced there for an internet minute, as they call it. How many Uber rides there, so that's doubled. How many videos viewed there on Snapchat has gone from 500,000 to 7 million there. Just the rate of that usage of these different companies there, in some ways they provide almost no service, and yet have massive values just based on the optimism that people have that they will solve all of our problems. So Vine, Spotify, Google, Tinder, there, it's really become this kind of whole social network there. Live footage cameras in Nova Scotia hacked there, people watching those. Just these devices that are intended to protect the children ultimately become portals for people to see into there. Hackers remotely killing Jeeps on highways there. Once again, they're so anxious to get this completely pervasive system in which there are intelligent devices working in our systems there, that they haven't realized that there are back doors to these elements there. And then you have these people who, on one hand, Schmidt is saying we have to be careful about artificial intelligence. He's the Google executive CEO there, and urging democracies to tap young talent to tackle looming security challenges. Well, those security challenges are often posed by companies like Google, and so in a way he's actually asking government to offload the cost and for them to take care of the security, while Google just moves forward at 100 miles an hour trying to create stuff, right? So This one, U.S. regulators approve first digital pill to monitor patients. So you swallow this thing and it's activated by stomach acids, and it's a digital monitoring device that, and it's always used with this idea that it is going to improve things, that schizophrenics will be able to track in terms of their medications so they won't go off and you won't have police incidents and people getting hurt there. But obviously this idea of tracking people, the idea of this being tied to our healthcare system is a violation of privacy, and yet it's so pervasive. It seems like it'll be a good thing. It seems like it'll help in some way, but it is so pervasive that companies like insurance companies will tie into these things. They're already doing that, tying into smart devices to say, if you wear this, you'll get a discount on your devices. Sorry, a discount on your coverage, which we know people buy into. The idea that phones, you know, this new Apple X phone that actually scans your face three-dimensionally is somehow going to make your device more secure, but then they've been able to fool it with a phony mask with some elements on there. But this is another lost leader because nobody's going to go and make a phony mask to fool your phone. It's just absurd there. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, look, it is fallible. But what's really concerning is actually the reverse, which is that Apple is making something that is scanning you biometrically and linking that to your voice data and then confirming that when you've said something, you said that at this time, at this GPS location there, and it is corroborated through an entire network of servers. And so that's very disturbing, and yet it's one of the biggest selling phones. They can't get enough of them there. Now Google's just been, just the other day, once again they said, we're not tracking you individually. They are tracking you individually there, and I'll explain why they're tracking you individually. So I'm going to be talking about companies that you wouldn't even think are part of this kind of massive network that is going to become overwhelming for us. Amazon. Amazon started off obviously selling things. They bypassed Walmart. Remember when Walmart was coming in and they were going to displace all those hardware stores? Well, they did to some degree, but now Amazon is displacing Walmart. The reason being is, coming back to that algorithmic reductivism I was talking about, is that it's totally efficient. It's a software process. In fact, they don't even review their own products. They have their people review those products. So those products, it's a self-continuing system in which the people are doing all the work to tell other people that they should buy stuff. So they don't even have to advertise, right? They just have to give the lowest price, which is easy because they don't have warehouses there. But more concerning is they have massive, massive servers there, and those servers collect data, and they aren't just used to collect information about where to send that thing to. They're collecting it on your purchasing desires. They're collecting it on your intellectual property there. And so this is collecting a massive database, which I'll talk about big data. So Baidu is the largest internet service provider, and not coincidentally also the largest artificial intelligence developer. They're using that server data to harvest information to create intelligent applications to monitor what you do. There, Facebook, same thing. They really want your data there. Facebook, the interesting thing about Facebook, and the reason it's so powerful is because, and you can see this kind of matrix in the back there, is that it's all of those peer-to-peer connections there. Is people saying, I really like this product, I really like this product. Word pops up saying Honda. Another one says Honda. They can actually map that and say there's like 50,000 people that love Hondas here. And so we're going to introduce those to other people. We're going to sell that information to Honda there. Google, they have their hand in everything. Microsoft, they're making money hand over fist because they're now no longer just a software company. They're now a server company. They've created this massive cloud of stuff. Cryptocurrencies. So Bitcoin. Bitcoin, and this is the flip side of security, which is that Bitcoins are a cryptocurrency, so they are a completely digital currency that is difficult to hack, not impossible to hack, but difficult to hack. So some people are wary of them, some people aren't. Each Bitcoin is now worth $8,000. People have so much confidence in this cryptocurrency there. And inevitably what happens is along come other companies and they start producing systems in which you can actually ensure that your money arrived at the other side and that transaction has been recorded there. So things like this. People are making money by farming, harvesting bitcoins. So I mean, if you started printing money, you would be arrested. But these guys are actually going and using these graphics cards that are used for video games, putting them into a network, and then doing what's called Bitcoin mining. So they actually have these things going and cycling, and it actually creates so much data and does so much packaging of these coins, it actually somehow creates currency. And that's the end of the limit of my understanding of that. And this is just something in somebody's basement that actually does that here. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I wish I could go into all these in detail. But I just want to point out the difference. This is one thing that's really made a difference here, is that you've got peak performance there. If you can see that blue graph line down at the bottom there, that is the development based on Moore's law, that everything every 18 months will double in terms of efficiency. And that green line is those video cards. Because what happened was they suddenly realized in the mid-90s that those video cards that had been developed for games were actually 30 times more efficient than the CPUs for doing something called floating point calculation. So they started applying those to scientific purposes there. And so now, in terms of their application for science, they're very powerful. But they're also powering artificial intelligence, and they're powering digital mapping for autonomous driving vehicles there. This guy is the CEO of the year, Chen, and he's the head of NVIDIA there. I advised my friend to buy NVIDIA a year and a half ago when it was $65. He's kicking himself that it's $212 now. It will only go up. That's not investing advice, but it will only go up just because they are in artificial intelligence, they're in Bitcoin mining, they're in basically everything that is exploding exponentially, and they're the leaders. Just nobody else can touch them right now. So, blockchain. And so they did a big test on Wall Street, which we know doesn't work very well with the big meltdown last time when they used an algorithm to figure out when things were working or weren't. But anyway, they've decided that blockchain, which is a system for ensuring that payments start on one end, go to another end, and that they're traceable through the whole process. So they've now totally bought into this, and there's the cost-based savings there. So there's like an $8 billion savings in terms of transactions that would normally be $30 billion there. And so IBM is now pushing this stuff, trying to get BC to use blockchain to track marijuana sales, right? So you always get this, which is it's going to do a social good there because we'll know who's using the marijuana there. Cloud computing, and so this is how it works. Just all these things feed into a virtual network of servers. They used to be in, well, they are in India, they're in America, they're in China, but after a while, companies started insisting, no, we have to have these in Canada or we have to have these in America. My university is one of those that realized that was a big mistake. There, big data here, so benefits for the cloud, productivity everywhere. You know, it's very positive. Disaster assistance, it's always up, meaning your hard drive hasn't collapsed there. But the important thing to understand is hackers used to have to go to your hard drive to get individual files there. Now, the hackers are actually the companies that own those servers and actually use that to mine their file. Okay, great, here. So mine time flies when you're having fun. So here's the network just of people. This is the way that it all works, interconnected. That's how Facebook works. Big data analytics there, so cost reductions faster there, and so they're really pitching these things. These are server racks. They're filled with GPUs that are just processing round the clock there, so it's scalable elements there. And so this one is artificial intelligence, which is a main category there. Then you have deep learning, supervised, unsupervised learning there. So the supervised learning used to be used to tell a computer, okay, work on these parameters. But unsupervised basically allows it to go and create connections itself. They're natural language processing, so voice to text right now is very powerful. If you have Alexa in your home and it's constantly listening to you and it's doing voice to text, that text is then turned into data. That data is then mineable, meaning that any country or any corporation can go and do a search for certain keywords and find that information and harvest that and put it in context with others there. Artificial intelligence is the main category there, so starting off in the 50s. Machine learning there, so, and I'll explain that in a second there. And then deep learning breakthroughs through the AI boom there. Sorry, I slided that one. So artificial intelligence is the overall category there. And then machine learning is the subset of AI which use statistical methods to enable machines to improve with experiences. And then finally, deep learning is based on what are called neural networks that are based on the way that our brain is actually constructed there. And it's now being used in a variety of different applications by companies like Google there. Every one of these major companies is involved in deep learning, and they've scaled up their people dramatically there. I won't go too much into this, but this is basically just the sort of matrix between how information is compared between evidence-based, deep learning, machine learning systems, prescriptive analytics there. So you can see that they have different models that computers function on there. Quantum computing, this one is the mind blower there. This is D-Wave, this is based in Burnaby there, and it was started by a football player who went into physics, and he basically managed to develop a system that allowed quantum computing to work. It had been a theory for a long time, but this one made it operable. So here, just to get an idea about how the D-Wave functions there, is that our standard computers work on bits, ones and zeros there. But this works on qubits. And so it's basically able to perform 2 to the power of 2,000 operations simultaneously. That's its theoretical limit. It's at 1,000, 2 to the power of 1,000. So that's more calculations than atoms in the known universe by several orders of magnitude there. So that's the scale there. I won't get into Schrodinger's cat too much there. So I want to just jump ahead a little bit here because I'm running out of time there and talk about, besides just Alexa and all of that stuff here, robotics. We've seen all of this coming up there. Try to think of all of this connected there. Autonomous vehicles, here self-driving, powered by lasers scanning the Earth and in a frequency, but very inefficient because they have to scan our known world. So what happens if you create a world that's optimized for those vehicles, not for us, but for the vehicles there? And so these are the different stages of autonomous vehicles there. What would driverless cars look like? Finally, I'm going to just finish off with Sidewalk Labs here, because this is the main thing I want to get to, which is Toronto has given Sidewalk Labs, which is a subset of Alphabet, which also owns Google, 800 hectares of a downtown area to make into a digital city. Like, what city does that anyway? And so here they are talking about this, and they're talking about how cities are comparable to operating systems and how cities function very much like digital devices. And so he goes on to sort of compare the history of New York and there. So it's hard to see there, but that's it, located in downtown Toronto. And so here's the way that they're mapping that out there for the system. And so they're looking to revolutionize the city. And here's some of the illustrations of how they talk about how cities are similar to the way that computer devices work.